Hey YouTubers, I've got a video I want to share with you. This is the first time I've ever seen this like this. I talked about this in my last video. Check below, I'll put it in the video responses and stuff like that. But in my last video I was saying, you know, 1 Thessalonians 5:3 says they will say peace and safety, or, you know, security is the same Greek word, peace and security, and then sudden destruction. So what I've noticed recently is that there's a lot of talk about security and peace separately. You know, in the past I've really focused on the instances of people saying peace and security literally, you know, that phrase.
Peace and security as well.
But I've noticed that they're both hot topics now, that people are talking about security a lot. Now people are talking about peace a lot. And I've found that because of the ambassador that was killed on 9/11, you know, in Libya, that all over the news they talk about security, security, security so much. I mean, it's just everywhere. And then now that the EU was given the Nobel Peace Prize, now they're talking about peace. They're talking about I mean, they didn't do anything to deserve it. It was just like when Obama won the Peace Prize. Europe has been plagued with riots and protests and violence, yet they get a peace prize. You know, Obama, he was barely in office and he got a peace prize for what they thought he was gonna do. So I just want to show you this video because this video shows them saying peace and security where they're not saying it as the one topic, but it's two hot topics in the same area. So they are saying peace and security, and I'm wondering if when it says that they say peace and security, well, a lot of it seems to be coming out of the West, America, and, you know, now Europe, because of the Nobel Peace Prize. So just making observations here. I do believe the sudden destruction is very soon, and this could be another sign that it's at the door. So watch this video.
Is it incompetence, deceit, or ideology? Well, thanks to Vice President Biden, the White House taking new heat over the Libya attack, and last night the Vice President throwing the State Department under the bus for security failures in Benghazi. He claims they never told the White House. The consulate in Benghazi asked for extra protection.
We weren't told they wanted more security again. We did not know they wanted more security again. And by the way, at the time, we were told exactly, we said exactly what the intelligence community told us that they knew. That was the assessment. And as the intelligence community changed their view, we made it clear they changed their view.
And today, Governor Romney jumping all over Vice President Biden's comments.
Today, I raised some questions about Benghazi and the tragedy that occurred there. And there were more questions that came out of last night because the Vice President directly contradicted the sworn testimony of State Department officials. He's doubling down on denial.
Former UN Ambassador John Bolton joins us. Good evening, sir.
Glad to be here.
I added ideology because I figured it's either incompetence, ideology, or cover-up. That's my three. But this is beginning to look a little bit like the old comedy routine, and this is not funny, but who's on first?
Well, I think Vice President Biden last night really crossed an important line, and it was reinforced by the White House spokesman today. They have dug a moat around the White House on the one hand and the State Department and the intelligence community on the other, basically saying that the buck stops at the State Department, as Ed Henry asked the spokesman earlier today. Now, if that's the case, one has to ask, what's their National Security Council staff for, if not to monitor what's going on at the State Department, to know where security problems around the world exist? Don't forget, ambassadors are the president's personal representatives. Obviously, they work for the State Department, but the ambassador covers all of our agencies overseas, and they're all presidential appointees. So to say, well, we didn't know about it is an admission, in my view, of real failure on the part of the top management of the White House.
Well, what Secretary of State Clinton said today, she said that Ambassador Rice had, and Ambassador Rice did the Sunday morning shows on Sunday after the Tuesday when it what happened. Said Ambassador Rice had the same information from the intelligence community that every other senior official did. I don't know if every other means the White House as well, but it sounds like she's saying it's the intelligence community that came up with this video protest idea when they are now denying it, that it was...
Well, the intelligence community has its own views, and they'll get their revenge in their own ways. But for the State Department's secretary, Hillary Clinton, to be saying that it was based on the intelligence community really defies credulity. Her own department was in real-time communication with the diplomatic security personnel at the consulate in Benghazi when the attack was underway, and the next day obviously talking to them. So forget what the intelligence community was saying. How about what the State Department itself was saying?
You know, this is the other thing that I don't think anyone's looked at, is that is the omission, what's not there. And had there been a protest, I suspect, at a U.S. embassy or consulate before this, the explosion was at 9:40 p.m. But let's say that there was a protest at 7 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock. That information, I assume, would have been relayed to headquarters.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, there was never even any information that there was a protest. Nothing.
No, quite the contrary. Business was going on as normal, and they recognized that there was some security concern because Ambassador Stevens did not leave the compound that day. He was meeting.
Well, it was 9/11, though. Other people. The last visitor was the Turkish ambassador toward the end of the day. There had been no report of any trouble for people getting into or out of the compound up until then. All right. Now, though, the White House said, we don't know anything. That's the Jay Carney says they don't blame the president, don't blame the vice president, don't blame me. Nobody told us anything. We're in the dark.
Yeah, look, there's no question. Neither the president nor the vice president are going to be involved in the nitty-gritty of hundreds of security decisions around the world. But in a high-threat mission where you've had evidence of al-Qaeda attacks against other missions, where, for goodness sakes, the Red Cross has withdrawn from Benghazi. The Red Cross, which lives in the environment of war, thought it was too dangerous. That's something that the president and the vice president and certainly the Secretary of State should be aware of all the time.
All right. Nobel Peace Prize today going to the EU, the European Union.
Well, they could have been worse. They could have given it to Barack Obama again. I mean, this is an example of the trivialization and the politicization of the whole Nobel Peace Prize process. And it also reflects a fundamental misconception that many Europeans have about why Europe is at peace. It's not because of the European Union. It's because of American power. It's because of the NATO alliance. It's because we sheltered Europe during the Cold War to give them the chance to work out some of their differences.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, the EU, Europe is failing. I mean, they've got their economy is going under, and they're creating another global crisis. The IMF recently said that we're going to have another global crisis. You've got countries about to go bankrupt that are in the EU, and the idea that they're now being rewarded, and at one point it says as a morale boost. It reminded me a little bit how, like, when you have a Pee-wee league and a sports team, and you give the losing team all trophies too because they're all 6 years old, and you want to give everybody a trophy. I mean, this is not a success story right now at the EU.
No, it's not. In fact, it contradicts the rationale of the prize. The argument for European integration that some people have is that war in Europe was caused by nationalism. So the way that you avoid war in the future is to reduce nationalism by forming something like the European Union. Yet what is happening today? They're rioting in Greece, they're rioting in Spain because of German dominance of the European continent.
Even Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, was in Greece, and they were calling her a Nazi just this last week.
Yeah, this doesn't look like the obliteration of nationalism, but fundamentally that whole point is wrong. You know, in Britain, their democracy didn't break down in the 1920s and 1930s, and that's why Britain is so Eurosceptic. They say our nationalism is doing just fine. Why do we have to give it up?
Ambassador, thank you, sir.
Thank you.